AITA for hosting Easter and kicking out my sister for bringing 10 unknown people. She decided to bring her boyfriend and his family, who I didn't know. My name is Alyssa, I'm 28 years old, and I live in the suburbs of Indianapolis. 2 years ago, I finally bought my first house after nearly a decade of budgeting, side gigs, and living frugally while working my full-time job in marketing. It's nothing extravagant, but it's mine, and I take a lot of pride in it. Hosting family has become one of my small joys in life, especially holiday brunches. I plan weeks in advance, test new recipes, set the table just right, even add handmade decorations. Easter is kind of my thing. Every year, I host Easter brunch. This was my 4th time doing it. My family knows the drill, I invite only our immediate family, and they usually RSVP so I can prep everything with precision. This year, like in years past, I invited my mom and dad, my older brother Jason and his fiancée Marissa, and my younger sister Chloe, who is 24. Chloe RSVP'd and said she would be bringing her boyfriend, Tyler. I had met Tyler once, very briefly, at a birthday dinner months ago. That was totally fine. I had factored him into the head count. I made enough food for 8 people, plus a little extra just in case. My dining table fits 8 exactly. I polished the silverware, set pastel name cards, even folded the napkins into little bunny shapes. I was ready. Or so I thought. Easter morning arrived, and everything was going smoothly. The ham was in the oven. The deviled eggs were chilling. The carrot cake was frosted. Everyone arrived right on time. Jason and Marissa brought flowers, my parents brought wine, and we were all settling in for what I hoped would be another lovely family brunch. Then, the front door opened again, and in walked Chloe. She was smiling like she had just pulled off the surprise of the year. Behind her, a parade of 10 people. 10 people. At first, I thought maybe it was just 1 or 2 extra guests, friends from out of town who didn't have anywhere else to go. But no. Chloe had brought Tyler's entire family. His parents. His 3 younger siblings, all teens or college-aged. His aunt. His cousin. And the cousin's girlfriend. 11 people total, including Chloe and Tyler. I stood there frozen in the foyer, holding a tray of mimosas, trying to process what I was seeing. My carefully planned table had 8 seats. I had food for 8. I had Easter-themed sugar cookies with exactly 8 names written in icing. I pulled Chloe aside and whispered, "What is going on? Who are all these people?" She waved her hand like I was being dramatic and said, "It's Tyler's family." I figured it was time everyone met. They're part of the family now. As if that was a totally normal thing to do, ambush your sister's carefully planned holiday brunch with a small army of strangers. I told her that was not okay. That it was incredibly rude to show up with 10 uninvited guests, especially without so much as a text. She rolled her eyes and said I was being uptight. That it was Easter and I should be welcoming and flexible. She gestured toward the living room, where her guests were now awkwardly standing, clearly aware they were not expected. I felt embarrassed, overwhelmed, and deeply uncomfortable. It might sound small, but for me, hosting isn't just about food and decorations. It's about creating a space where people feel welcome and cared for. I put my heart into it. So being blindsided like this, in my own home, felt like a betrayal. I told Chloe I wasn't prepared to host that many people. I didn't have enough food, or dishes, or even space for everyone to sit. She snapped that I was being selfish. I snapped back that she was being inconsiderate. It escalated quickly. She stomped back into the living room, gathered Tyler and his entire entourage, and stormed out. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. But I didn't apologize either. I stood by the door as they left, closed it behind them, and turned back to face my family, who were now all sitting in stunned silence around my picture-perfect dining room. My mom looked like she had just witnessed a car crash. Jason tried to crack a joke about setting a new family record for fastest drama, but even he looked uncomfortable. Marissa sipped her mimosa in silence. We ate the food. The brunch went on. But the tension hung in the air like smoke. It was not the Easter I had imagined. That night, the messages started. Chloe texted me in all caps, calling me a controlling freak. She said I humiliated her in front of Tyler's family. That I made her look bad. That I ruined Easter for everyone. She called me selfish. Cold. Uptight. I responded calmly, saying that she should have asked before bringing 10 people to my house. That I wasn't given a chance to prepare, and it wasn't fair to expect me to host that many people on zero notice. She doubled down, saying Tyler's family was family now, and I should have welcomed them. That I made them feel unwanted and unwelcome. I pointed out that I had only met Tyler once, that I didn't even know any of their names, and that it was deeply unfair to expect me to host a dozen strangers. She told me I had no right to gatekeep Easter. My mom got involved, texting me the next morning. She told me she thought I should have found a way to make it work. That family means opening the door, not closing it. I asked her if she would have been okay if I had done the same to her, invited 10 strangers to her house on a holiday with no warning. She didn't answer that question. Instead, she said that Chloe felt very hurt, and that it would be best if I apologized and smoothed things over. I haven't responded to Chloe since then. I've read all her messages, and I know she's genuinely angry. But I also know I didn't do anything wrong. I wasn't cruel. I didn't scream or throw anyone out. I simply said no. I set a boundary in my own home. And somehow that made me the villain of Easter. So, I really want to know, am I the asshole for not just going with the flow and kicking them out? Or was Chloe out of line for springing 10 uninvited people on me and expecting me to smile and serve them like I had been expecting them all along? Because right now, my entire family seems to think I'm the one who ruined Easter. Update 1. So, I let things sit for a day. I didn't reply to Chloe's texts. I didn't call her. I didn't say anything to anyone in the group chat my mom later started titled Easter Misunderstanding, like this was some kind of sitcom plotline. I needed space. I needed to cool down. Because honestly, I felt like I was being gaslit by my own family. Here I was, in my own home, hosting a holiday I had spent weeks preparing for, shopping for groceries, ironing linens, cleaning every corner of my house, baking from scratch, and somehow I had become the villain for not agreeing to entertain an entire second family I had never met. The silence helped. I needed to process what had happened without the noise of everyone else's guilt-trippy opinions. But when I finally opened Chloe's messages again the next day, it was a full page of emotional bombs. Her texts had only grown more intense. She called me dramatic, cold, and heartless. She said I embarrassed her in front of people who were supposed to become part of our lives. She wrote, and I quote, "You made us all look like fools and slammed the door on something special." So I finally responded. I told her that she had no right to ambush me like that, especially on a holiday I had planned entirely on my own. I reminded her that I had invited the people I knew, the people I had prepared for. Not 11 total strangers. I said, "You didn't even ask. You just showed up with a mini army." That's what it felt like. A full-on invasion, disguised as family bonding. She didn't hesitate to reply. Her message popped up less than a minute later. She said, "They're Tyler's family, and Tyler is my family. They were excited to celebrate with us. You should have welcomed them. That's what a real host does." And I just stared at that message, completely stunned. A real host? A real host is supposed to pretend that being blindsided and overwhelmed and pushed out of their own space is fine. A real host is supposed to absorb the impact of someone else's choices without protest. I reminded her that I never knew they were coming. Not a word. Not a call. Not a, "Hey, heads up, we might have extra people." Nothing. No RSVP. No courtesy. No basic respect. Just a surprise 10-person guest list 5 minutes after brunch was supposed to start. I told her clearly that if she had just asked, even the night before, I would have tried to find a way to make it work. I might have made it buffet style instead of a formal seated brunch. I might have done paper plates. I might have adjusted. But she gave me no opportunity. She took my effort and turned it into a circus without warning. Her response. It was supposed to be a surprise and a way to bring the families together. You ruined that. And honestly, that's when the anger boiled back over. I told her flat out that she cannot weaponize the word family to bulldoze over other people's boundaries. That using, but their family, as a blank check to override someone's time, energy, and personal space is not noble, it's manipulative. I told her that I wasn't going to apologize for having a limit, especially when I was the one doing all the work. I reminded her that I had to smile through a ruined day while trying not to cry into the deviled eggs I had made by hand. I told her it's not selfish to want a little respect in your own home. It's not ungrateful to expect people to treat you like a human being, not a hotel concierge. It's not controlling to ask for a damn text before a parade of strangers shows up in your living room. She read all of it. I saw the little, seen, check mark. Then a long pause. And finally, her reply came through. She doubled down and said I was being selfish and ungrateful. Update 2. I honestly believed that after our argument, Chloe would take a few days to calm down and reflect. I thought we'd both take space, regroup, and cool off like siblings do after a major clash. I had stood my ground, laid everything out calmly but firmly, and I truly believed that once she processed it, she would at least understand why I was upset. I even told our mom on the phone the morning after Easter that while I was hurt and disappointed, I didn't want to hold a grudge. I said I needed time, that I didn't want to keep the feud going, that I just wanted to be left alone to sort through everything in peace. Well, apparently Chloe heard that as, great, the door is open again. It was around 3 p.m. the very next day. I was in full post-hosting mode, wearing sweatpants, hair a mess, no makeup, no bra, the whole works. I was mentally and physically exhausted. I hadn't touched the mountain of dishes in the kitchen or even put away the serving platters. My back still ached from hauling chairs up from the basement. I had planned to do nothing but drink coffee, scroll mindlessly on my phone, and maybe cry a little while watching a baking show. That's when I heard it, the doorbell, followed by persistent knocking. I peeked out my window and my heart dropped straight into my stomach. There they were. Again. Chloe, Tyler, and the entire extended ensemble. 10 people. Standing on my front step like they were about to film a holiday special. They were holding grocery bags, takeout containers, covered dishes, and one of Tyler's younger siblings was actually carrying a folding table. I thought I was hallucinating. For a full second, I genuinely believed I must be dreaming. I opened the door, stunned, and Chloe greeted me with a giant, performative grin like she was hosting her own lifestyle segment. She said, in a voice I can only describe as staged and overly cheerful, "We figured we'd give Easter another shot. This time no stress, no prep work on you." I just stared at her. I could barely register what I was seeing, let alone process it. I said, "You can't be serious." I was standing there in a coffee-stained hoodie and socks, and she was acting like this was a magical redo of a Hallmark holiday. She laughed, actually laughed, and said, "Come on, Alyssa. Let's not be dramatic. We brought everything. You don't even have to lift a finger." Behind her, Tyler's parents were smiling politely, and the cousin's girlfriend was carrying what looked like a 2-liter bottle of soda and a fruit tray. It was surreal. I reminded her, my voice already shaking with disbelief, that this was my house. That she was once again showing up with an entire uninvited party of strangers. And again, without so much as a text or a phone call. She just shrugged and said, they loved the house. Tyler's little brother said it's his dream to live in a place like this. We wanted to show them that you're not actually as cold as you seemed yesterday. And that's when it clicked. This wasn't about reconciliation. This wasn't about making things right. This wasn't even about Easter. It was about Chloe salvaging her reputation in front of Tyler's family. She wasn't trying to make peace with me. She was using my home and my hospitality as a stage to prove that she wasn't the inconsiderate one. I wasn't a sister to her in that moment, I was a prop. A carefully framed backdrop for her self-image rehab campaign. The switch flipped. I shut it down immediately. I told them, firmly and without hesitation, that this was not okay. That it was not acceptable, not welcome, and not going to happen. I looked directly at Tyler's parents and said, politely, but clearly, that I was sorry they had been dragged into this awkward situation, but Chloe never got my permission. This wasn't some open-door gathering. This was my private home, and this repeated disregard for my boundaries wasn't something I was going to tolerate. The mood shifted. Tyler looked embarrassed. A few of the family members started shuffling uncomfortably. The folding table was slowly lowered to the ground. Chloe, however, went into full meltdown mode. She started crying. Real tears, loud enough for the neighbors to hear, right in the middle of my driveway. She yelled, "You're ruining my relationship," as if I was the one who had orchestrated this disaster. I told her, calmly but with all the steel I had left, "No, you are. By lying to everyone and pretending this is about family when it's about control." That was it. She screamed something unintelligible and dramatic, spun around, and stomped off, her audience of 10 awkwardly following her back to their cars like they just left a failed flash mob. One of the siblings actually waved apologetically. I nodded in return, because I genuinely felt bad for them. They didn't ask to be caught in Chloe's personal vendetta. Less than an hour later, the text started again. A string of passive-aggressive messages, all from Chloe. Stuff like, "Thanks for proving to everyone how you really are," and "Hope your perfect little brunch was worth throwing away your only sister." She stormed off and later sent me a string of passive-aggressive texts. Update 3. When my mom called a few days later, I braced myself for yet another guilt trip. I had been dodging Chloe's passive-aggressive messages like emotional landmines, and I was honestly expecting my mom to join the campaign. But her voice on the phone caught me off guard. It wasn't angry, or emotional, or performative, it just sounded tired. Not the kind of tired that comes from lack of sleep, but the kind that builds up from watching your kids fall apart over something stupid and feeling powerless to stop it. She asked if we could all meet, me, her, Chloe, Tyler, and some of Tyler's family, at her house to talk things out. She said she didn't want this to fester. She said she wanted us to act like adults and find some way forward. I agreed, but only under one condition: Chloe doesn't get to control the narrative this time. I told my mom clearly that I was not walking into a trap where Chloe gets to play the victim and rewrite what happened. My mom promised to mediate, to make sure everyone was heard. I think she finally understood that the only reason things got so out of hand was because nobody held Chloe accountable. So that Friday evening, I drove over to my parents' house. It felt surreal walking into that living room, the same one where I used to sprawl out with my backpack and geometry homework, the same place where we took prom pictures and watched Home Alone every Christmas. But now it felt like neutral territory, a courtroom disguised as a suburban living room. I sat on the left end of the couch, folded my arms, and waited. Chloe was, predictably, late. Tyler showed up with his mom and dad, both of whom were polite but noticeably subdued. Nobody touched the tea my mom had put out. When Chloe finally walked in, it was like she had rehearsed for a role. Her body language screamed victim. Her face had that blank pouty expression she used to wear as a teenager when she got grounded. She didn't waste time either. She launched right into it. How hurt she was, how humiliating it felt to be thrown out in front of people she cared about, how she was just trying to do something good. She said, and I quote with crystal clarity, that she just wanted her two families to meet and didn't think it was such a crime. I sat there listening in silence, jaw clenched, waiting for the same old cycle of excuse and deflection. But then something shifted. Tyler, who had barely made eye contact with anyone since walking in, suddenly spoke. He turned and looked at Chloe, calm but direct, and asked why she told him I knew. That I was totally on board with all of it. And it was like the air left the room. Chloe froze. Just froze. Like someone had hit pause on a movie. And then his mom chimed in. Her voice was soft, but it carried weight. She said that they would never have shown up unannounced if they thought I didn't know. That they brought wine and homemade desserts because Chloe had told them I was excited about them coming. She looked at me while she said it, and I could see genuine regret in her eyes. Not judgment. Just sadness. Like she realized they had walked into something that wasn't what they were told. I felt my stomach drop. Hearing it like that, from people who had genuinely believed they were invited, who had gone out of their way to bring thoughtful contributions and try to make a good impression, it made everything so much worse. Chloe hadn't just assumed it would be okay. She had deliberately lied. She had manufactured consent where there was none, all to create the scene she wanted, the social moment she had dreamed up in her head. I wasn't just disrespected. I was manipulated. Everyone was. I turned to her and asked, as calmly as I could manage, why? Why would she do that? Why would she lie to her boyfriend, to his family, to me? Why would she drag everyone into something they didn't consent to just to force a narrative? And she snapped, not with anger, but with that frustrated, desperate tone that only shows up when someone is cornered and running out of excuses. She said she wanted it to go well. That she thought if we all just met and had fun, I'd forget about being mad. That I wouldn't care once the pictures were taken, the table was set, and the laughs were flowing. And that right there told me everything I needed to know. She didn't trust the people around her to choose to go along with her plans. She had to engineer it. Script it. She treated us all like props. Like if she could just orchestrate the vibe correctly, the rest would fall into place and no one would notice she had bulldozed everyone to get there. I reminded her that she never gave me the chance to say yes or no. She didn't respect my boundaries, didn't ask for consent, and then doubled down when I didn't play the role she had assigned me. And the worst part? She came back the next day to try to stage a sequel, without ever asking. There was a long silence after that. One of those moments where time stretches out and everyone in the room is collectively realizing that something they thought was just a disagreement actually had roots deeper than they imagined. Tyler looked crushed. Not angry. Just disappointed in that quiet way that sticks. His mom looked at her lap. His dad hadn't said much all evening, but he gave me a small, respectful nod, like he was acknowledging the emotional weight of everything that had just been said. My mom, to her credit, didn't sugarcoat anything. She took a breath, rubbed her hands together like she was trying to keep from trembling, and said that Chloe owed everyone in the room an apology. A real one. Not a shrug. Not a justification. A full-stop apology for dragging them into a lie, for putting me in that position, for trying to rewrite the story in her favor at everyone else's expense. Chloe didn't respond right away. She looked at me, then at Tyler, and then back at the ground. When she finally did speak, it was barely a whisper. One word. Sorry. It wasn't a speech. It didn't come with tears or dramatic flourishes. But it was something. The first crack in the wall. Tyler's family handled it with more grace than I would have expected. His mom said she appreciated the clarity and that they respected boundaries, that nothing like this would ever happen again. His dad added that it was clear I cared about my family and my home, and that he admired how I had handled myself. Tyler didn't say much more, but the way he glanced at Chloe as they were leaving told me this conversation wasn't over for them. There was tension there, quiet, restrained, but unmistakable. After they all left, my mom sat beside me on the couch. We didn't say much at first. She reached over and took my hand. Then, without any fanfare, she said I had been right to say no. That she had been wrong to pressure me. That she hadn't realized how much Chloe had twisted things. She said it was hard watching your children grow up and clash, but even harder when one of them is clearly in the wrong. It wasn't some big emotional breakthrough. But it felt real. And for the first time since this entire mess started, it felt like the connections between all of us, strained and tangled as they were, might actually get better. Slowly. Honestly. With real boundaries, this time.